Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 4 of My Senpai is Annoying. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So last we left off, it was Christmas and winter holidays and all that. Igarashi, even now she's still wearing that scarf she got. And I guess, it's only natural she would be in a good mood. However, it seems like we're sort of edging into that pretty common plotline where somebody has a cold and therefore it's, tantamount to a death sentence if a romantic interest doesn't go over to their house to take care of them. Oh dear. Wow, Takeda Senpai is literally me, for real. He's a Luddite with an old phone. So, unfortunately, he doesn't know that Igarashi's sick. He would have known that if he had had, a modern phone, but, he doesn't. Interesting. The thought occurred to me briefly that although Igarashi's home is certainly built on a normal human scale, I was sort of, I just had the image of, Gandalf visiting the Baggins residence in my mind at the thought of Takeda sort of going over to just take care of Igarashi. Now, I do think she's being a little bit hyperbolic about things, in all likelihood she's not going to die. But, fortunately she might not have to worry about it one way or another if somebody's here to help her. Okay, so I get the feeling that the plot might be thickening. Alright, now I take that back. She's not actually going to tell him, but, I do think the image of her just ripped grandfather driving over on a motorcycle, that's an evocative image. And you know what? I think that would actually add, a little interesting something, especially if Takeda is also going to come over to take care of her. Her grandfather did seem pretty protective, so I'd imagine he'd try giving Takeda the business whether or not he truly deserves it, which I think it's safe to say he doesn't. Man, I've had days like this where I've been sick and there's been basically nothing in the refrigerator. Man. Yeah, I've had really bad days like this, where you just don't want to get out of bed because you feel so crappy. I guess we can only hope that Takeda manages to show up at the nick of time to prevent this travesty from happening. Alright, there we go, the hero shows up just in time. Man, this is certainly annoying behavior if he's shown up to take care of Igarashi. And he brought, food and energy drinks and all sorts of stuff you could use when you're sick. Oh, okay. This is an interesting change of pace. He wasn't going to invite himself in and take care of her. But, now she's asking him for help. Man, there is something about that. Maybe neediness isn't the right word, but I guess, the sincerity of asking for that kind of help, there's something about that. I guess it's kind of like, not the confession, but that sort of loaded question in the first episode. There's some real vulnerability here. Yeah, Takeda, he really has gotten a bad rap. He's not annoying in the slightest, especially if he would be willing to just, help essentially a coworker. Because at least from my perspective, coworkers are, at best, acquaintances, I don't think I'd ever really consider one of them a friend, at least not as things stand. I mean, that said, maybe if one of them was really in a jam, I'd be willing to help, but probably not to this degree, sort of hanging out in their house, cooking them food and all that. So I think just from this perspective, Igarashi's got it pretty good. Takeda's a good, morally upstanding guy. Of course, there's also the sort of, the cultural hang-up, or maybe that's not the right word, but she's essentially invited a man into her house. There is a certain boundary that's been crossed here. I think it's also interesting that he's wearing the tie she bought him. I think that's, it might have just been a coincidence in-universe where he just decided to wear that tie, but it is a nice touch. That's a nice little thing, too, that he remembers the stuffed animal she got when they went out to lunch. That she sort of keeps it, maybe not in a place of, importance, but that it's still just sort of prominent in her room. I think that's nice. And I'd imagine he would, maybe not enjoy it, but it would be a nice thing to see. So unfortunately for Igarashi, she didn't clean up her apartment particularly well, so I'd imagine, now that she's not sick, that's kind of an embarrassing thing to have happen. So I think I know where this is going, Oh, hush my mouth. I was going to say, Takeda's not here yet. Surely he hasn't caught the cold, has he? But, well, it seems like my instincts were wrong. Although, he does make things a bit more interesting by mentioning in front of everybody how he took the time to take care of her. Yeah, I bet there's some chatter around the office water cooler about stuff like that. Especially seeing as how it's becoming an increasingly frequent occurrence that these two are interacting with each other. Okay. This is actually an interesting plot. He's decided to stop being a Luddite and get a smartphone. I can't say I necessarily agree with that decision, but, given what's happened, I guess it kind of makes some sense. And, nicely enough, Igarashi's also taking the opportunity to help him. It's one of those things where, it's totally not a date, but it kind of could be construed that way. I feel like, just the way he said, are you sure you're okay helping out a geezer pick out a new phone? I feel like this is almost sort of setting something up where it's like, he's kind of similar to her grandfather in a weird sort of way. I mean, that salesman certainly seems to think that she's his daughter, much to her chagrin. Yeah, so I can only imagine there's going to be all sorts of shenanigans that unfold as Takeda now learns how to use this new phone. I mean, I've got a pretty new phone, and there's all sorts of features on it that I don't use at all. And probably if push came to shove, I would have to take some time to figure out how to use it. Oh, the poor guy. He opened the front-facing camera. Yeah, they're doing all this stuff with QR codes. I personally do not like QR codes. But you know what, that's nice too, and I think that's a little bit of foreshadowing. Igarashi says, if you catch a cold, I'll take care of you, hint hint. I thought that's where things would be going by now, but, I don't know. Maybe it'll happen later this episode, maybe it'll happen in the next episode or something. I feel like they're definitely setting it up. So I guess now it's about time that, Natsumi calls up Igarashi to tease her. I think she knows pretty darn well that, that guy she saw Igarashi with, in all likelihood took care of her, in addition to whatever else they were doing. Man, for someone who's loudly exclaiming, "It wasn't what you thought it was," she's certainly making it seem like it was in fact what Natsumi thought it was, even though it wasn't. Now it is interesting that Igarashi's getting all hung up about how Takeda hasn't been texting her or anything, but I feel like, yep, here we go, his lack of understanding of technology has really bit him. He doesn't know how to send a text on this thing, so that's why he hasn't done it, It's not for lack of wanting to contact Igarashi, he just can't figure it out. Wow. I find it interesting that Igarashi's being so evasive about this whole Takeda-senpai getting a phone business. I don't think she has to hide the fact that she was the one who helped him. Now that he did finally send her a message, she's, over the moon about it. I'm really digging how the sort of, the problem or the conflict of this episode is rather wholesome. It's like, oh, my direct supervisor got a new phone and he doesn't quite know how to use it. Oh dear. Okay, it seems like I was right. Takeda might actually be sick now. And if that is in fact the case, then this presents an interesting dilemma. Because on the one hand, Igarashi's gonna feel guilty, I'd imagine, but on the other hand, it's her time to shine, He took care of her, so therefore, it's only right to return the favor. I'd imagine it's going to present a bit of an interesting challenge. You know, if Takeda going over to her place was like Gandalf hanging out with Bilbo Baggins, I'd imagine this is going to be an adventure in a very short person trying to get things off a high shelf. Which, that's never a good thing at the best of times. Yeah, you know what? This is nice. There's a nice, maybe juxtaposition isn't the right word, but there's, I guess a kind of rhyme going on here, where the same sort of things are happening, Takeda feels crappy, he doesn't have any food in the fridge, so he's gonna go out and get something, but, coincidentally, this is the time when Igarashi has decided to show up. And wouldn't you know it, she came prepared to help him out, with food and everything. Of course, she's far less confident in it, but I feel like that would be appealing in its own way. Alright, so she was in fact sort of rummaging around the kitchen, but it's mainly because she just can't find anything rather than because it's all way high up. It almost seems to be a bit of a different sort of problem in that, Takeda, he cooks for himself, he knows where all his stuff is, but he doesn't necessarily organize everything. And I suppose that's another challenge here, Takeda has these gigantic oven mitts that, Igarashi could probably, wear up to her elbows. That's actually kind of funny, it's like a baseball catcher's mitt. I'm wondering if this is going to cause a problem. I don't know if, wearing oven mitts that are too big is, a cooking hazard. You know what? I guess that's why he's never used the oven mitts. He just doesn't need him with his asbestos hands. Hey, careful, the food's hot, but what does he care? He just picks up the lid with his bare hands. Ooh boy. Now I know he's probably saying that casually, but, that's a serious statement. You would make a great wife. I'd reckon at this point, that's gonna seal the deal. That's gonna be, something Igarashi thinks about frequently from now on. Now, I guess it is fortunate that he didn't really catch his cold from Igarashi, so, she doesn't have to feel guilty, but, still probably not a good thing that he got sick. I know this whole sort of, formulaic plot about a person being sick and their love interest taking care of them. I know it's sort of something you frequently see, but I think this is one of the best instances of it. Because, yeah, it does sort of hit all the usual story beats, but, I don't know. I think it's been executed particularly well. I really like that bit that sort of mirrored what had happened before. Both of them were going through the same motions. And I guess we're getting a little bit of extra stuff here where Igarashi's considering maybe, taking another step. Okay, well, I thought she was gonna kiss him or something while he was sleeping, but unfortunately it was not to be had. I'm suddenly reminded of, comparing this to Toradora. You know, maybe the violence was, not warranted, but, in Takeda's position, I'd be, a little curious about why somebody was tugging at my beard. Yeah, you know, that's a little unfortunate that incident sort of marred everything else, but, you know what, life is just like that sometimes. I guess if things were to work out ideally, no one would really, I guess, say anything about that little incident, and it would just sort of fall by the wayside. You know, I can already feel it now. Like, he's gonna say something like, you know, if you want to feel my beard, just ask. And that's gonna be, you know, rather awkward for Igarashi. That said, you know, he does just sort of blab that she took care of him, which is, embarrassing enough as it turns out. See, I feel like Kazuma might not say anything, but Sakurai, she might tease Igarashi a little bit, you know. She'd be well-meaning about it, I think, but, I don't know. Like, I can see why Igarashi would be embarrassed, but on the other hand, you know, that was an act of kindness. Yeah, you know, Takeda's right. This isn't anything to be embarrassed about. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.